My name is Daniel Hartley, and until 3 weeks ago, my family believed I was a financial embarrassment. I am 34 years old, single, and according to them, still figuring life out. That's how my mother liked to describe me at dinner parties: soft smile, tight voice, as if I were a disappointing investment she couldn't quite write off. The night it all exploded was my father's 60th birthday dinner. A private room at an expensive London restaurant. Crystal glasses. Tailored suits. My older brother Oliver talking loudly about portfolio expansion and property acquisitions as if he personally invented wealth. And then someone asked me what I'd been working on. I said calmly, consulting. Oliver laughed. Not a small laugh. A full, theatrical one. Consulting, he repeated. Freelance means unemployed with Wi-Fi. The table went quiet for a second. Then my father added almost kindly, Daniel's just going through a phase. He's never been good with money. That was the story they had agreed on. The email from Revenue and Customs had arrived 2 days before that dinner. Subject line: Request for clarification. High net worth review. Most people panic when they see something like that. I didn't, because I knew exactly what it was about. For the past 6 years, while my family assumed I was floating, I had been building something very specific. Not flashy. Not loud. No sports cars. No Instagram business quotes. Just contracts. Data. Quiet numbers moving in predictable directions. I worked as an independent compliance consultant for mid-sized tech firms, companies too small to hire full-time regulatory teams, but too large to risk mistakes. European data protection law is not glamorous, but it is ruthless. And ruthless laws create demand. I charged high fees. I saved aggressively. I reinvested carefully. No one in my family asked questions because they never believed there was anything worth asking about. At dinner, when Oliver joked about me living invoice to invoice, I almost told him the truth. But I didn't. Because 3 days after that dinner, I was scheduled to sit across from a senior tax auditor reviewing my 7-figure earnings. And the irony was almost poetic. My family thought I couldn't manage money. The government thought the HMRC office wasn't intimidating. No dark rooms.
No interrogation lights.
Just neutral walls, muted carpets, and a woman in her 40s with sharp glasses and an even sharper tone. Mr. Hartley, she said, flipping through my file, your declared income has increased by 380% over the last 3 years. That tends to attract attention. Fair enough. She wasn't accusing me of fraud. She was verifying legitimacy. And I had come prepared. 3 organized binders. Digital backups. Contracts. Invoices. Retained earnings breakdowns. Investment allocations. Dividend reports from the compliance software platform I had quietly acquired equity in 2 years ago. While Oliver was expanding his image, I had been expanding ownership. The auditor's expression shifted slowly from skepticism to professional respect. You've structured this conservatively, she admitted. Low debt. Diversified holdings.
No offshore irregularities.
I nodded. I prefer boring money. She almost smiled. Then she said something that stayed with me. You'd be surprised how many people with half your income live 10 times louder. Louder. That word followed me home. Because loud was exact. The official letter arrived a week later. Review concluded. No discrepancies found.
Clean.
Verified.
Closed.
But attached to that letter was something far more interesting. A formal summary of my declared assets and taxable holdings for record confirmation. Total declared net worth, £3.2 million. I stared at that number for a long time, not because I was surprised, but because I knew exactly what my father would say if he ever saw it. Daniel doesn't understand capital growth. Daniel isn't stable. Daniel avoids responsibility. That same week, my parents hosted another gathering. Smaller this time. Sunday lunch at their house in Surrey. The colonial dining table polished to a mirror shine. Oliver again talking about leveraging debt for strategic growth. At one point, my aunt leaned toward me and whispered, "You should really listen to your brother. He's done very well for himself." I smiled politely. Then my father cleared his throat. "Daniel, Perhaps it's time we discuss your situation seriously. You can't drift forever. If you need help restructuring your finances. Help. Restructuring. From a man who had refinanced his house twice in 2 years. I almost let it go. Almost. I set my wine glass down carefully. Actually, I said, keeping my voice level, I was audited. Forks paused midair. Oliver blinked. You were what? High net worth review, I replied. Last week. My mother's smile froze. My father's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. High net worth. Oliver repeated slowly, as if the phrase didn't belong anywhere near me. I reached into my jacket pocket, not dramatically, just calmly, and placed the summary letter on the table. I didn't slide it toward anyone. I simply left it there. My father picked it up first. I watched his eyes move. Line by line. Declared income. Retained earnings. Equity holdings. Then the total. The color drained from his face, so subtly most people wouldn't notice. But I did. Oliver leaned over his shoulder. His laugh this time was shorter. Strained. That can't be right. It is, my father said quietly. The room felt smaller. For years, I had been the financial cautionary tale. Now, I was a verified anomaly. And the most interesting part wasn't the number. Oliver recovered first.
He always did.
That's just declared income, he said quickly. Liquid wealth is different. You can't compare that to real assets. There it was.
The shift.
From mockery to minimization. I didn't argue. I agree, I said. Liquidity matters. Then I added almost casually, that's why I don't leverage debt. My father's jaw tightened. Oliver's entire property strategy was built on leverage. Mortgages stacked on rental properties. Expansion funded by future projections. It looked impressive until the market twitched. My aunt tried to soften the tension. Well, Daniel, if you've done well, that's lovely. We just worry because you've always been so private. Private, not broke.
Private.
My mother finally spoke. Why didn't you tell us? That question wasn't curiosity. It was accusation. Because in their world, information flowed upward, toward authority. And for the first time, I had withheld something valuable. I didn't think you were interested, I replied. It wasn't cruel. It was factual. The silence that followed wasn't awkward anymore. It was recalibration. And then my father said something that changed. Contributing. The word landed heavier than any insult Oliver had ever thrown at me. I looked at my father carefully. His tone wasn't aggressive. It was strategic. Measured. The same voice he used when negotiating contracts. What exactly would I be contributing to? I asked. He didn't hesitate. The house needs structural updates. The market is shifting. We're considering repositioning assets. Family wealth should be aligned. Aligned. It sounded almost noble. Until you translated it. Oliver leaned back in his chair. It makes sense. You've benefited from the family name, after all. That almost made me laugh. The family name had never signed my invoices. It had never stayed up until 2 a.m. reviewing compliance risk reports. It had never negotiated equity stakes. I had built everything without their introductions, without their capital, without their endorsement. I didn't realize we were collectivizing earnings, I said calmly. My mother's eyes sharpened. Don't be dramatic. We're talking about supporting each other. Supporting. The same family that had publicly labeled me irresponsible. The same father who had just implied I was drifting. I folded my hands neatly on the table. I prefer individual accountability. 3 weeks later, the headlines changed. Interest rates rose. Property values in Surrey dipped sharply. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to strain anyone overleveraged. Oliver called me first. Not to apologize. To discuss strategy. I might need short-term liquidity, he said casually, as if we were equals now. Just until refinancing clears. Short-term liquidity. Translation, cash. I asked one question. How exposed are you?
Silence.
Then, more than I anticipated. Of course he was. Debt amplifies confidence in good years. It amplifies fear in bad ones. 2 days later, my father called. His voice was different, less polished. The banks are tightening, he admitted. It's temporary. But if we consolidate internally, we can avoid unnecessary losses. Internally, the family fund had suddenly discovered its irresponsible member had reserves. I didn't gloat. I didn't remind them of dinner jokes. I simply said, I don't invest emotionally. It wasn't cruel. It was policy. And the second rate hike hit harder than the first. Oliver's temporary liquidity problem became a refinancing nightmare. 2 of his rental properties slipped below projected valuation thresholds. The banks didn't care about confidence. They cared about coverage ratios. My father tried to maintain control. He scheduled a family strategy meeting. Same dining room, same polished table, different atmosphere. No one laughed this time. Oliver looked tired. My mother kept adjusting her bracelet nervously. My father had spreadsheets open on his tablet. Daniel, he began carefully, we're restructuring. If you extend a secured bridge loan. Secured. That word told me everything. They weren't asking for help. They were negotiating terms. I listened quietly as he explained repayment projections, collateral options, timelines. It was surreal. For years, they had assumed I needed guidance. Now, they were pitching to me. When he finished, I asked only one question. What happens if the market drops another 10%? Oliver's face tightened. It won't. I held his gaze. That's not an answer. Silence again. This time, not humiliating. Just honest. After that meeting, something subtle shifted. They stopped calling me unstable. They stopped offering unsolicited advice. They stopped laughing. The market corrected slowly over the next few months. Oliver sold 2 properties at a loss. My parents downsized their expansion plans.
No bankruptcy. No dramatic collapse.
Just consequence. As for me, I didn't become louder. I didn't upgrade my car. I didn't suddenly perform wealth. I kept consulting.
Kept investing.
Kept living in the same understated flat they once described as temporary. The real change wasn't financial. It was psychological. At the next family dinner, no one asked what I was working on. They already knew. And when my aunt mentioned something about risky markets, my father looked at me, not with authority, not with correction, but with something unfamiliar. Respect. Not warm, not affectionate, but real. The tax auditor had verified my numbers. The market had verified my strategy. But what truly changed the dynamic wasn't the £3.2 million. It was this. They could no longer define my value based on their perception. Sometimes the loudest revenge isn't exposure. It's composure. And sometimes the strongest statement you can make is to never need